do people feel like they are able to contribute so they belong? And then we created this kind of like cycle, because we didn't know what came first. Is it feeling of belonging or is it feeling of contribution? But we identified through the research that when you can contribute, then you can belong. You know there is a purpose for you in that particular place. So contribution leads to belonging. I think that was one of the most fascinating points of my research, was identifying what was first.
Have you ever noticed how some leaders effortlessly inspire their teams while others seem to struggle to make any impact at all? If so, this is the right episode, because today we're diving into that subtle power of signaling and influence with my guest, Adriana Vaccaro, a renowned behavioral psychologist and expert in culture and leadership development, among other things. So today we'll be discovering how mastering those non-verbal cues and ensuring you're consistent in your actions and behaviors can transform your leadership and influence organizational behavior and culture in profound ways. Join us as Adriana talks us through her groundbreaking culture-minded framework with 6 crucial capabilities, including trust, collaboration, and equity, all of which work together to drive that sustainable, consistent, long-lasting cultural transformation that eludes so many leaders and organizations. This episode is full of those practical tips, tactics, strategies, ideas, things you can do to embed those values and that culture into the everyday behaviors of your team, and help us all understand why monitoring things like employee turnover and customer satisfaction can actually be useful. It can reveal things like the true health of your culture. So it's very much on topic for us here at Leading with Integrity today, and Adriana is a very kind and generous guest as well, and I just know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Do listen to the end to hear those all-important links to Adriana's website, how to get in touch with her, reach out, learn more, etc. Also, do visit my own website as well. Come and join us at the Integrity Leaders community and take the next step on your own leadership journey today.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Adriana, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It is lovely to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, as I say, thank you for being with us. And I'm going to push you in at the deep end a little bit to start us off. Tell us your career story, your journey so far, like what you do today, why you do it.
Well, it's a loaded question, but it's hard to get to what I do today. But I've done a lot of things. I'm a behavioral psychologist. I have an MBA, and I work human resources for about 11 years. And for the last 10, I've been working specifically in culture and leadership development. So I do have a small company, and I created a whole framework on how to assess culture and how to support leaders influencing the culture of a place.
Cool. And what was it that drew you to this question of culture in particular? Because it's something that a lot of people overlook, I think.
Yes, I think my experience working in human resources internally, it really made me realize how important culture is, especially going from one company to the next. But it's usually when you're in HR, there are other things that are urgent. So there is, the benefits and the health insurance and compliance and laws and different things. And then we keep saying, I'll get to culture, I'll get to it. And we don't. So I wanted to become that resource for people that are in the HR position or in a C-level position, and they care about culture, but don't necessarily have the time or a framework to work on it.
And having spent that time in HR, whenever I get an HR person on the show, there's 2 things I ask them, which are probably unfair questions. But the first one is always like, what's your craziest story from that time in HR? Because everyone has one. You don't have to answer that though if you don't want to.
I do have one that I think will never leave me, and it was a suicide attempt, based on conflict in the workplace. So I think it really impacted my career, and I was really young. So it was only like my second year in an HR function, and I don't think that story will ever leave me. I think it's going to stay with me forever.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And it's the sort of thing that should stick with you, I think, as well. I think that says a lot about you as a person, in a good way, Okay, fair enough. I mean, that was a very, very serious answer to what's normally a jokey question, but no, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I do have more uplifting stories, but I think that one is one that is unforgettable, because it made me realize early on how important the environment at work really is. But I do have other more inspiring and positive stories on like working in HR of people that have maybe didn't see their own potential until someone else told them they could do it. And I think that's always very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a serious story, but I think that's fine because it underlines the what you do, why you do it, why it has meaning to you. I think those are all important things to bear in mind. And so the second thing that I tend to ask HR people now is, I've seen this thing where I don't think it's fair to the HR team or person, because there are a lot of small businesses, there's only going to be one of them. But I've seen leaders that they offload the legal compliance side of things to HR without wanting to hire like an employment solicitor when they probably should, for example. And then it becomes part of the HR person's role, which I think is a little bit unfair. Is that something you've experienced? Do you agree? Is it unfair, or is it a natural part of the job?
It is very unfair. And I think early on, like if I see HR people that are taking on that responsibility because they think they have to say yes and they're trying to Google their way into a legal degree, I usually recommend, you're not a lawyer, and there are answers that should come from a lawyer. So I think we need to be aware of compliance, but we shouldn't pretend that we can answer a question like a lawyer would. So that's usually my response to that, but I see it all the time. Luckily I never fell into that category, but I do see especially younger professionals, because they want to prove themselves. If something gets put on their desk, they try to figure it out. And there are many things you can figure out, not a legal question.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of understand why it happens so much, because lawyers are expensive, aren't they? But it's, in the long run, you feel like it would be cheaper to just pay someone who's qualified.
And I think there are organizations that offer maybe like a low fee monthly retainer just so that the HR person has access to them. And I always recommend one of those solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, the options are there these days, aren't they? Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about culture then. First of all, I love the way that you've joined leadership and culture together. I'm totally with you on that. I think they're two sides of the same coin, or at least they are if you're doing either one of them correctly. Yeah. So there's a few cliches, there's a few comments out there. I mean, something I know you've said in the past is that culture is behavior in motion. I guess a cliche that we bring up quite a lot on this show as well is about culture being the sum of the worst behavior that you overlook or allow to happen. It's true the other direction as well. What does all of that mean in practice, though, from your perspective?
I love the way you framed the question, because you said in practice. And I think that is the key word of culture. And that is why I think a behavioral approach is very different than a philosophical approach. And a lot of organizations think about culture in terms of maybe the language that is on the website or the language that is on the posters, but it's a practice, it's what people are doing. So getting out of sort of the thoughts and really observing the practices that every person has, what we tolerate, what we reward, what we want more of. Are we really correcting the practices we don't want to see? I think we're getting into a place where we're all so busy that giving feedback to someone becomes secondary, but that's really how we cultivate culture and how we keep those guardrails that if we're seeing something we don't want to see, we must effectively coach that person, or at least provide feedback so they can find coaching.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, that I feel like a lot of leaders don't really think about it until too late, like until something's gone wrong, somebody's complained about something, or there's been some sort of incident. I guess that's where HR often comes into the picture as well, for good or ill.
I think one of the patterns I've seen as a consultant, which I guess I didn't notice it when I was working internally, but as a consultant, I usually get our culture is great. Like there is a belief by the executive suite that culture is great because that's their intention. But then when we deploy a survey or when we do a listening session and we talk to employees, maybe the culture isn't great. And it is, I always mention to clients I'm talking to, you need to get data. You need to know what they are feeling so that you're not basing your decisions only on your own thinking. And it's the same as getting on the scale. Like, even if you don't like the number, the fact that you're not getting on the scale doesn't mean that the number is going down. You still need to have access to some sort of measurement so that you can take action.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I mean, what are like the red and green flags to look out for? Like, what does a good culture look like versus a bad one?
So for me, turnover, if I go into a company and maybe they don't want to do an employee engagement survey, or they don't want to deploy a tool, I said, oh, that's fine. Let's look at your turnover numbers. And then turnover really says a lot about a culture. And if you look at, there are always patterns. So if we see turnover, but then maybe most of the people are leaving after 90 days or they're leaving after 6 months. So once we identify that pattern, we can see which of the forces of disengagement is really kind of like hitting them. And they're very easy to identify. It's usually a person being in the wrong job, or a person not having the right manager, or a person not feeling like they belong to the collective. So once we identify, we can then course correct.
Fair enough. And then like the opposite end, like what does a good culture look like? Like what are the signs that, I mean, if you're working within one as well, because it can be quite difficult to see that when you're right in amongst it.
Right. So there are things I see, and again, this new perspective from a consulting lens really has given me a lot of visibility that I didn't have before. So sometimes I go into a company and I see some things that they're not even noticing, but they're great things, like people getting promoted, or people staying there for a really long time, or people coming and saying, I know a different way of doing this. Would you let me try? That may be just a regular day for a manager, but for me as an outsider to see that type of behavior, I'm happy to tell them this is great. That means there is psychological safety. They want to experiment. They want to bring something new. They want to stay with you. So I think those are great signs. And also the other indicator, customer retention and customer satisfaction, that is a sign that your employees believe in the company. And that's a very loud indicator usually.
Yeah, that last one in particular, like happy people in your team usually means happy customers and vice versa. So I think we're going to talk a bit later about like the potential ROIs of good culture and doing that sort of change process. But I think for me, that's always been one of the biggest ones, because if your people are unhappy, I don't know, maybe I'm a skeptic, but I think you're kidding yourself if you think your customers aren't going to notice that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, they will notice.
Like, even if they're like the most professional, in inverted commas, because I sort of hate that word, but even if they're like doing their jobs, they're not doing anything overtly to give it away, I do think humans are pretty good at reading between the lines.
Yes.
Which kind of leads into the next question anyway. One of the things in leadership that I'm really passionate about is this principle of leading by example. And it's kind of another variation on that theme of action speaking louder than words, isn't it? So when it comes to culture, then how can leaders, and particularly ones who are maybe struggling with this idea, how can they move from just talking about it, like saying the right things, to actually doing the right things as well, walking that talk, living those values or that culture, and leading by example?
I love that question, and there is a 3-point framework on what it takes for a leader to really have a positive effect on the behavior of other individuals. And the first one is their own conviction on the direction they're going. And even though that's not something you necessarily need to be talking about, it's called signaling. There is a lot that you can research on signaling theory, and it happens at the subconscious level. So if I am convinced of what I'm doing and my direction and where I'm going, people that are around me or people that report to me will feel that conviction, even if I'm not talking about it. So I think that's the first one. The second one is the consistency of behavior. And a lot of times we say, we are going to be on time. We are going to cultivate trust. And we say it, but we're not practicing it. So that ambiguity when a leader says something but does something else also has a very profound impact on people. I don't want to say following them, but maybe people reporting to them. And then the third one is logic. If my actions in general are logical, other people feel like they can trust me. But if maybe I say, David, you have to send that report because I say so. You might send a report, but for your subconscious mind, it's like, is that why I'm sending the report? Like someone saying so is not necessarily a logical reason. And yes, we need to know how to take direction. But if I say, David, can you please send the report? Because it's going to show the client our performance for the last quarter, that's a whole different signal going to your brain. So I think understanding all the nuance of our language, our behavior, and our own conviction is how we can really lead by example.
Yeah, so that the signaling one that you started with is very intriguing to me, because the logical part of my brain thinks, no, that can't be right. But then also the experience I've seen it happen. So it's an interesting one. And I do think there is, I don't know, there's something in there about maybe it's like the non-verbal cues that people give off, the sort of the subconscious, the stopping short of just fully supporting something if you don't truly believe in it, and you may not realize you're doing it, but other people pick up on it. That sort of subtle thing that happens every day that you maybe don't realize you're doing.
Yes, it is. Signaling is a fascinating concept, and I actually is relatively new to me. Probably the last 3 years when I was writing my book, I did an interview, and the person I was interviewing started talking about signaling, and I had to go. I'm like, what exactly did you mean? And he kept talking about like an electric wave. So it wasn't making sense to me. So I kind of have to go in and research and find statistics. And it is a real thing, but is very nuanced. It's the little things, is the not, maybe not performatory, but the meaning of your actions is connected to that. And again, has been researched for decades. So there is a lot out there for people that are interested into it. But I think once you learn it, it just won't leave you because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I was talking to someone this morning about this idea of alignment, and it's something that I speak about a fair bit in leadership work that I do as well. And the way I kind of describe it, and I think it kind of aligns to the 3 points you were making anyway, but I think where people fall down as leaders, or where leadership teams as well, when there's more than one leader in an organization, where they maybe don't perform as well as they could, where they suffer with things like poor staff retention and lack of engagement. I mean, the data on those are pretty depressing in recent years, aren't they? But it's that where the alignment isn't there, not just between individual leaders within that team of leaders, let's say, where maybe they're not quite agreeing with each other, because agreement and consensus isn't essential, but alignment is not the same, is it? Like, you can disagree but still pursue the same goal, sort of thing. And so I think that there's also that alignment within yourself as well, between like your values and your beliefs and your purpose, whether you believe what you're doing and the organization you're working for is doing the right things, pursuing the right goals. There's the things you say.
Yes.
And then there's the things you actually do. And I think that third one, I think, is where people often go off the rails. Or the first one, where they don't really believe it, but they're saying it and they're doing it because they think it's going to get the result that they want. And it's an interesting one, I find. I mean, I'm overusing the word interesting. I recognize that, but
I love the idea of alignment because there is a way to know if you are aligned with someone or with a company. However, when you are misaligned, it generates the same kind of like amygdala triggering feelings of being in front of something unfamiliar. So when we feel that sort of, is what they're asking me to do, is it aligned with my values, or am I feeling this because maybe I've never done the thing they're asking me to do? So I think understanding the difference will allow you to realize, okay, my values are aligned with what they're asking me to do. So even though I'm not comfortable with the task, but its values align, I'm going to proceed with support. But if it's not aligned with your values, you should know not to proceed, which is different than when it's unfamiliar.
Yeah, and I mean, what you were saying about signaling as well, I think, so if we put ourselves in the shoes of the followers, the people that are being led, I think they pick up on these things. If you're not aligned with if your words don't match up with your actions, or you say something, you do something, but they can pick up on it. They're like, well, you don't really believe in that, so right. I'm not going to take you seriously. I'm not going to trust you as much. Yes. I'm certainly not going to trust that what you're telling me to do is the best thing to do, or the best thing for me either. Right. And I think that's important too, is people need to feel that their leaders have their best interests at heart, and it's not just about the leader filling their own pockets or the shareholders' pockets or whatever.
Yes. That goes into, I love that you use the term trust, because again, that's character and competence. So we cultivate trust when the other person is demonstrating both character and competence. So alignment, signaling, all of those are elements that will only support your trust building with your employees.
And it might feel like we've gone a bit off topic from culture there, but we actually haven't, have we? Because all of these things contribute to the culture in an organization.
Yes.
One of my favorite descriptions of culture, I don't know how you'll feel about this, is that sense of it's the way we do things around here. And I think why it appeals to me is because it is grounded in those, like, the day-to-day things, the daily behaviors, the signaling, the things people say, the way they talk to each other, the things they do or don't do. And I think it makes it much easier to kind of grasp the concept, understand what it is that you're talking about.
Yes, I think simplifying the concept of culture is something that we need to do more of, because sometimes we have this aspirational, philosophical, we're going to change the world one pancake at the time. And then people can really connect to it. I heard a description once from actually a pastor, and he said culture is how we act, react, and interact. And I think it's so simple and it's so relatable, and it's something you can remember. And then you, again, like when every moment in a day, when we are with different people, if we stay aware of, yes, we are doing our job and delivering our work, but we're also cultivating that culture. So having that awareness is quite important.
I think it's something you've hit on the head there as well, is like the grand vision, the aim, the goal of whatever the entity is, isn't the same as its culture.
Right.
So, like, what was it? Which one was that you quoted? The pancake? I'm guessing there's a restaurant somewhere that has that.
So I think there is a company that makes pancakes, and they feel like they want to change the world one pancake at a time, which is a beautiful goal and vision, right? It's aspirational, it's philosophical, and it gives people purpose. But when you have, people working a line of production and people working in packaging, it's really how we act, react, and interact. Is not, maybe collectively they are doing something good and they're very connected to recycling and sustainability. They have a beautiful vision for what they're trying to achieve. But that, aspirational point, even though it gives us direction, is not the day-to-day work. So I think landing it to the person that is working on the boxes, they contribute to the culture. So what do we want them to be thinking as they are making that contribution? And I think it should be something simpler of, your actions and your language has an effect on everyone around you, their lives. So how can we really be aware of that contribution in that present moment?
I agree. And I think, so I guess my point is, you need that vision, that grand statement, whatever it is. Another famous one that just pops into my head every time is the Microsoft one from way back in the 80s about a computer in every home and in every workplace. And annoyingly, they've probably achieved that by now, I guess. I don't know what their current one is. But anyway, it's nice if there's a bit of altruism and saving the world type stuff in there as well. Obviously, that one was very profit focused. Ultimately, that's what they were doing it for. I think it can be both in an ideal world. But I don't think that is the culture, though. I think the culture is, as you've said, it's the practical day-to-day stuff. Because that a big grand aim like that, for the individual working in that business, that's meaningless to them. They're not going to. You understand the grand strategic goal, great, but for my day-to-day role, that has no meaning to me. Like, I'm not personally going to be able to achieve that. Right. So putting it in those practical terms and in terms of, like, as you said, like the interactions, the reactions, that sort of thing, but also what is my part in that big grand strategy? What am I, individual person, David or Adriana, going to do that works towards that goal? And I think that speaks to the culture too, and whether and how the leaders are able to communicate it too.
Right. And I think that level of practicality, it becomes prescriptive, unlike, the aspirational. There is one deliverable we usually put together for our clients, and it's a two-part. So one is, behaviors we want to see. And those behaviors are simple. They're not, we're going to demonstrate honesty beyond, like, none of that. It's like, we tell the truth. Very simple, simplistic. And then we have the prime directive. And these are the questions employees should be asking themselves when they are doing their work. And I'll give you an example from a human services organization. The group came up with the prime directives, and they were saying questions like, would I put my child in this program? Would I recommend this program? Those are questions employees should be thinking about. And that really has an impact on culture, because their actions are going to be different than actions if they weren't thinking about those questions. There is a call center for a claims processing center, and they only have one prime directive, and for the call center employees, and it is, would I treat my loved one, maybe my mother or my father, the way I'm treating this caller? And they have it in front of all the computers. So I think that is powerful, right? Like, where you're talking to someone, but you're being reminded, would you like your own mother to be treated the way you're treating this person? I think those prime directives are extremely powerful.
Yes, I agree. A couple of things. One that's reminded me of the way Simon Sinek talks about values and value statements. He says it should be in terms of a behavior, a thing, like a verb almost, like we treat each other with kindness, for example. Right. And I think that's relevant because values tend to maybe not define a culture, but they sort of set up the aims of the culture, don't they? The other thing is something that relatively recently in my career and life that hadn't really occurred to me before is this concept of like, trying to think back to what you said earlier exactly, but when leaders talk about their culture, like, you know, our culture is great. Another thing I hear quite frequently, I don't know if you do as well, is we're like a family around here. Now, to me, that has always felt a little bit distasteful, but a few conversations I've had with people in more recent years have underlined to me why that's actually pretty toxic. Firstly, and most importantly, is family doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. A lot of people have really contentious family lives or dysfunctional or, you know, abusive, all sorts of horrible things happen in the world, don't they? And so that prime directive that you mentioned earlier about would you want your mother or father to be treated in the way, maybe yes, they would want them to be treated horribly. So I don't know. You're assuming a relationship there, aren't you?
Right. So the whole family, we're like a family. It is very, I don't know, it pushes my buttons in many ways because I know it's a positive intent. I know there is a positive intention behind it. And I know that sometimes it starts when the circle is small. And usually, like if you study the pattern, usually it starts with family members. Maybe there was a husband and a wife or a father and a son. So they start bringing this small circle and it feels like a family. But as they grow and achieve success, it is unfair to tell your, 4,000 employees, we are a family when you, Mr. CEO, don't even know their name. So no, we're not like a family. And then if we have to do layoffs, no, we're not like a family. So I think we should carefully use those terms because it brings a false sense of safety to some people of, this is my family. I will do whatever it takes. And then when is their position, the one that gets terminated, it hits differently. So I think I'm always careful on making recommendations about it. And if I go to a place and they already have, that we're like a family here posted on all the walls, I am sensitive and I understand they had a positive intent, but I do my best to convey the challenges that come with making that statement. And are we really a family?
Yeah, I have my own biases because I used to work for a boss who said that, and with almost every behavior put the lie to it. But I think that there's two real reasons, I guess, that I have a problem with it. And one, they're sort of interrelated. Firstly, like, you don't choose your family. So I don't think it's appropriate to map that to a workplace because you're whether you intend to or not, the implication is you're removing choice and people would have options, even when the economy is not so great, they still have options.
I like that. Yes, that's a good point.
Also, you want people to choose to work for you and become part of your organization and remain part of it, where in a way that isn't always possible in family situations.
Right.
And then the other thing I think is there's, and maybe this is my bias talking, but there's that sort of undercurrent of the implication of, because we're family, you'll work a few extra hours without extra pay, won't you, David? Or because we're like family, you don't mind coming to this meeting that's really nothing to do with you and it's going to involve half a day's travel and it's really inconvenient and you shouldn't have to do it, but you will because we're family, right? That sort of thing. And pay cuts as well. Like, you don't mind being paid a bit less, do you? Because we're family. And it gets really toxic, I think.
It gets toxic. And I think it also, for individuals that maybe want a promotion or want the next level, getting there becomes performing more as a family member. So maybe they have to go to more dinners with the person that the head of the family, right? So are we really promoting performance and development, or are we promoting kind of like submitting to one person to get ahead? And that is also toxic.
100%. And then there's also another one that's popped in. There's that, I don't know, particularly when it's a male CEO, I think there's that sort of the patriarchal father knows best, don't question him sort of mindset that I find goes hand in hand with this thinking.
I like to empower a lot of my clients, like I mentioned earlier, will be, head of HR or people in culture. And if the CEO is that, strong patriarchal figure and comes and says, we're going to promote Sally. I had dinner with her 2 days ago. She's phenomenal. Her kids are going to go to college. We need to promote her. I want to encourage the person that is now has the responsibility to produce all the, we're going to promote your new salary. Even if you have to follow that directive, I would like to propose that they do some data collection and say, I understand this is what you want to do. I would like to see what level of competency or capability, maturity level Sally is at, so that we have a clear plan so that Sally can really succeed. And it's more than you like her and you had a great dinner, is we're going to set up Sally for success. So that a year from now, we're not talking about like, Sally doesn't know what she's doing, because that person is not going to be able to say, but we promoted her because you said she was ready, right? So having the data points to really support people in their success.
Absolutely. So back to culture again. We've not really left it, have we? But so something that I know that you teach, that you use, that you apply in your work is this framework, the culture-minded framework, I believe you call it, which has 6 capabilities in it. Did I get that right?
Yes.
6. So what are they? How do they work?
Before I tell you the 6, I want to tell you we started with 10 and we did a lot of research to see if they could be validated. And some of them had no impact on culture, but the 6 that we kept, we start with leadership or culture-minded leadership. Is something you can definitely connect to the culture. Employee engagement. Do people want to go to work? Are they really engaged? Do they want to contribute? That's the other capability. We have trust and collaboration. Again, it has a strong impact on the overall culture. So if you're able to measure your level of trust and identify how to get to the next level, you can definitely improve your culture. You can look at team dynamics. Are people sort of protecting their own information, or are they sharing? So that leads to collaboration, innovation, and improvement. Equity and belonging. And it's interesting because we first had looked at diversity, but then we realized that diversity doesn't have an impact on culture that goes across all levels if you don't have the diversity at all levels. So in order to really validate that capability, we had to concentrate on equity and belonging. Do people get what they need so that they can be successful? And do people feel like they are able to contribute so they belong? And then we created this kind of like cycle, because we didn't know what came first. Is it feeling of belonging, or is it feeling of contribution? But we identified through the research that when you can contribute, then you can belong. You know there is a purpose for you in that particular place. So contribution leads to belonging. I think that was one of the most fascinating points of my research, was identifying what was first. Then we have process improvement. And the interesting part about process improvement is that a lot of companies maybe have great process improvement practices like, Lean or Six Sigma or ISO, whatever they're doing to produce great quality. But we identify that if you are low in terms of maturity level at maybe leadership or at trust and collaboration, you can have all the processes you want for process improvement and all the markers and all the statistical controls. You won't perform at a high level because the other capabilities are low. So part of what our diagnosis can do is say, since you are a level maybe 2 on these capabilities, even though you could be at a level 4 in process improvement, you won't perform at that level until you improve the other capabilities. So they're really interconnected. So even though they're independent, you can't really improve in one until you have improved in the other ones. And I like to use kind of like the example of I have 3 boys, but one of them is 4. So if my 4-year-old drives my vehicle on the highway, that is what happens when we don't have the ideal level of maturity, right? Like, does he understand the steering wheel? Yes. Does he understand putting the car on drive? Yes, he understands, but he doesn't have a sense of direction, a sense of the speed limit, a sense of awareness of the other vehicles. So just because we could do something doesn't mean we should. So I think that concept of maturity really, I think it is profound in terms of leadership. And you can apply that to the culture, but you can also apply it to an individual. So if we're looking at a manager, maybe he's really good at, I don't know, customer service, but is he good at leading people? Is he good at providing feedback? So you cannot call that person a good manager until all the capabilities are rising to the same level. That was a long answer, but I hope I...
No, I like it. I think maturity is something that's not talked about enough in leadership generally, but certainly is relevant to culture too. And I think also it's quite important to disconnect that from age and experience.
Yes.
Because they're not automatically the same, are they? Certainly not in my experience. I'm pretty immature, to be fair.
No, I'm with you. No, it's absolutely not the same. And that's why we base the maturity level on specific capabilities. Uh-huh. So a company can be 20 years old or 50 years old and be really immature in culture development. Or a company can be 5 years old and be performing at a level 4. So when we use the capability and the maturity model, it becomes prescriptive. So we come in, we see what the level of maturity is, and we help you ascend to the next level. So if you are maybe a fixed culture, we want to help you evolve to an evolving culture or an improving culture. So is how can we diagnose where you are and help you get to the next level? And again, that can be replicated at the individual level, the team level, or the company level.
Yeah, and I do like the equity as well, because it's that type of equity as well, not the ownership of the company type. Because again, like there's a route where you might think that would have a positive impact on the culture, but as you say, like maybe it would, but not if we don't have all these other components. And I do think that's sort of a metaphor for leadership as well, because part of the effectiveness, the beauty, the joy of leadership is that it can bring together multiple different skill sets and create a team that's greater than some of its parts that probably wouldn't succeed if any one of those elements wasn't present. So I like that. Maybe I'm conveniently seeing connections there where maybe they're not real, but
they are real.
Yeah. So I have to ask as well. So you started with 10. What were the 4 that didn't make it? Diversity, I'm guessing, was one of them. Because you mentioned that already.
Yes, diversity didn't make it. Technological innovation didn't make it. Oh. And it was interesting because my publisher said, can we make it? Because of kind of like how the book will perform. But the data didn't match. So like they kept saying, can it be like an independent capability? And I'm like, no, it cannot. And I know technology is important and agility and all of that is important. But I wanted to have a framework that wasn't good just for a year, right? Like I wanted to have a framework that will have longevity. So I do understand we have to be aware of technological innovations. But we also need to be aware of how everything keeps changing. And, in 2021, employees were looking for purpose and meaning and all these things. Employees today, because of technological innovation, they're looking for stability. They want to know their job is going to be there next month. So that's why we had to remove technological abilities. What else did we remove? So initially we had talked about trust as one capability, but psychological safety and collaboration, so they were all independent. So we ended up putting trust and collaboration and psychological safety as a different one, because we couldn't analyze collaboration without a level of trust. And we realized that if a company is low on trust, it will immediately remove all collaboration potential. So we had to merge those two, which created a lot of extra work in terms of statistics. But I think the final product is, can stand on his own. So I'm pretty happy about it.
Fair enough. So we sort of hinted at this next question earlier on. I mean, you probably hear a few objections to this sort of thing, or challenges in the way of culture building and taking it seriously as well. One of those is usually going to be, where's the value? Like, what's my return on investment for this? What's your answer to that? How can companies measure a decent ROI against a cultural transformation? Like, what's the benefits?
I hear that.
Sorry.
Way too much. So my answer is employee retention and the cost of a disengaged employee, which we have calculators on our book portal. They're free and you can just plug in your numbers and you get. So if we have a small company and maybe they have 10 employees and 5 of them are disengaged, you can go into the portal and see what that's costing you per year. So I think is not only, surface level, I will say employee retention and employee engagement. That's real return on investment you can calculate. And long term, I will say customer retention. And every time we go into a company, we can connect how engaged your employees are with how long you can retain a client. So I think when people understand kind of like those relationships, culture all of the sudden is less fluffy and more relevant.
No, you're preaching to the choir, but I had to ask. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it in some of the Gallup studies as well at a global level. I mean, it's tens of billions, I think, in the last report I saw, in terms of the cost of disengaged people the world over. And you read things like that, and it does make you wonder, like, why aren't more businesses thinking about this, taking it more seriously? And I think it kind of goes back to what you said near the beginning about people always have these other priorities, don't they? Particularly business owners. There's always something else they have to spend the money on first.
Right.
It's a funny one. Last question on culture, which is a bonus question, if you like. If there's someone in the audience right now who, for whatever reason, has decided culture is something they need to focus on, they're in a leadership or a management position, and they've got no idea where to start, what are your top tips going to be? What's the first things they should be doing?
I will invite them to explore the book portal, which is free. You don't have to even read the book, but you go to culture-minded.com and you can calculate how much lack of cultural work is costing your company. And then you get some recommendations immediately of things that you can do. You can also assess your kind of like your maturity as a leader, not for the whole company, but you as a leader. And again, it gives you some recommendations. So I will say the most important part is to start. And maybe you start at the leadership level, because you as a leader can create a culture, at least for your team, right? And then, of course, there are other books I'm happy to recommend. I love the work of Stephen Covey on the speed of trust. And I think that is almost like a culture manual for the leader. So I definitely, it's very tactical, not just aspirational. So it has like, do this and then this and then this. I love that type of prescriptive reading.
Lovely. Well, some great places to start there. just because I enjoy hearing the answers, the stories. I hear too many stories about toxic and bad managers, so I like to hear the more positive side of it. So what is your best memory of being led?
What a beautiful question. What a beautiful question. I had I reported to president and CEO years ago, and it was a drug testing laboratory, and I was the director of operations. And I had all kind of like the Six Sigma process improvement background, human resources. I didn't have the clinical side, and we were a drug testing laboratory, and they opened a position for a chief operating officer. And, I obviously posted the position because it was part of my job. And my boss said, no, that position is for you. You should be the next COO. And I remember thinking, how am I going to have clinical people reporting to me? And he made me see that I could do it. And I will just never forget what it feels like to have someone seeing potential in you that you haven't even considered. So that to me was very inspirational. And I try to do that for other people. That was maybe, 15 years ago. So I really have been trying to do what he did for me for other people.
I love that answer. One of the recurring themes that make me keep asking this question is things similar to what you said there, where somebody has believed in me before I believed in myself.
Right.
I hear that fairly frequently, and it's always heartwarming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then the second aspect as well that I think, again, like it's been a while since we talked about this in the context of leadership, but is that the legacy of a leader as well. Leaders create other leaders. And that he clearly has done that for you. And now you're doing the same. You're passing that experience on to future leaders as well. And he's lit that spark in you, I guess. It was a he, wasn't it? I didn't miss
it. It was a he, yes.
Just checking. Yeah.
He was he was my boss. Yes, I think there is that saying, you're not a leader until you have developed other leaders. So I definitely learned that from him.
And only the best ones do it as well. So there you go. Okay, final question for our last 5 minutes. This one is my absolute favorite one, which is why everyone has to answer it. Like you can't escape it, I'm afraid. It's leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
If you had to pick one person, but it could be anyone you can think of, so they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious as well, if you like, but someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. So who would that be for you and why?
Anthropologist Margaret Mead. She really studied how behavior affects culture, but more importantly, it studied how we can change systems with our own behavior. So a lot of times I think we tend to accept the circumstances and the systems and be like, well, it is what it is. But I think her work really inspires people to pursue change. And she has this quote, and I hope I say it correctly, but it's something like, never doubt that a committed group of citizens will change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And I think that is so inspirational, because we can improve our environment, and then collectively it just has a ripple effect. So I would love to have a conversation with her if that was possible someday in heaven.
I've heard the quote. It obviously has done the rounds in recent years for various reasons. I hadn't realized that was its origin though. So I'm now going to have to go and look her up and learn more about her. Thank you.
It's powerful. Her work, is extremely powerful, very humanistically driven.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And bonus points as well, because no one's chosen her before.
Nice. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, it's a very human response to just assume that at an individual level, there's not much we can do about things, whether that's in terms of like politics and the world, or business and the team and the company we're working for. And I think what's always helped me is to remember that if everyone thinks that way, then it will always be true. So
right.
you've got to do something. Someone has to do something at some point, don't they? So you might as well be you. Why not? What's the worst that could happen?
Yes.
Lovely. Well, Adriana, thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sorry we've had to cut it a little bit short at the end.
No, this was perfect. I think I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for being an amazing host, and thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Likewise. And come back anytime. And I will put your website down in the show notes so everyone can find it easily as well.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you again, Adriana, for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your wisdom with us today. Really enjoyed learning about signaling. That was a new one to me. And it's really useful always to underline the importance of those consistent everyday actions that really do transform a culture and an approach to leadership. Listener, viewer, thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to learn more and dive deeper into the work that Adriana does, do visit her website. It is in the show notes. It's culture-minded.com. You'll find resources there, a free organisational culture assessment. If you are new to leadership, if you are struggling with that adjustment to leading the thing instead of doing the thing, and if you work or operate within a highly technical specialist company or environment, then I invite you to come and join us at the Integrity Leaders community. You will find there exclusive content, opportunities to network with other like-minded individuals and leaders in the same or similar position in their career as you. Tools to enhance your leadership practice and behaviors, help you along in that next step of your journey. And on top of all of that, courses, resources, knowledge base, all sorts of things, and early access to these podcast episodes. You get them the week before anyone else does. So do come and join us. That link is on the screen in the show notes, and it is leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. Have a browse of the website itself, and then when you're ready, back to the homepage and hit that green button to come and join us at our Heartbeat community. Once again, it's called Integrity Leaders, and it is there for community, learning, resources for new and struggling leaders or first-timers to leadership. Join me again next week as we usher in the month of May with my next guest, Salvatore Manzi. We'll be communicating about communication, what makes it effective and useful, as well as other related topics like leadership presence, authenticity, and how to handle those complex, challenging conversations in the modern workplace. So I hope you'll be back with us again. And until then, have a great week. And as always, be a leader, not a boss.